All right, a couple logistical items before we start the lunch panel. First, the panel is between you and dessert. So after lunch in this panel, then dessert will be out there. So they've got that to live up to. And then number two, the panel in the next set of sessions. And then we have the retrospective downstairs where we definitely want all of your feedback. There'll be good times and drinks and all of that stuff. So definitely enjoy the panel, get dessert, do your session, hit the retrospective, get feedback, and make sure that we can learn and improve. I did learn something here. They taught me how to break a board out there. So out in the open space, they're teaching people how to break boards. So definitely this learning topic. You can do things that you didn't think you knew how to do. Yesterday's theme, a lot of it was around Columbus and things we have in Columbus and around starting things. I think you'll see from this panel, there's Mary who's going to be leading the panel, Mary Kaufman, and all the panelists are from Columbus and work in the area. So you'll see that in the learning space and in developing the talent pipeline, we have a huge set of assets here in Columbus, Ohio. So one of the things I've themed from a lot of these talks has been that learning is a constraint, or resources or people that know this stuff is a constraint. And if you think about it, if you look for someone that has 5 years of Swift experience, it's going to be pretty hard because it was invented in the last year, right? So having people with large lengths of experience when technologies are changing every 6 months is difficult. So the speed at which they can learn is a constraint, and the speed at which we can build talent. So if we have talent that's great at learning and developing new skills, then Central Ohio is going to be able to flourish with things, and you'll be able to flourish in your careers. So without further ado, let me introduce Mary Kaufman and the panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? How are you today? Let's hear it out there. Great. Well, I'm Mary Kaufman. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon to talk about what I think is one of the most important things that we can do in focusing on how can we create the communities and create the lives and to untap the potential that we have right here in Ohio and in our growing community. So we, as a team, sat down and talked about how can we create a conversation and bring what we consider to be people who are passionate in their field, that cover the spectrum of this conversation, and really engage in some quality conversation and dream and share and just connect on this very important topic. So I want to thank all of you for taking some time to be with us this afternoon, and I especially want to thank our panel. So give our panel a hand. Thank you so much, panelists, for being with us.
My water.
So we're talking about growing the talent pipeline, and I am sure each of you have had a time in your life where you fit into one of two categories. One was, what am I going to do with my life? When you're young, when you're thinking about your future and what are you going to do, and you were a person that was in the pipeline, that you were looking to find that next job, or maybe you're actually here because you're thinking about making a career change. So your viewpoint might be one of a participant in that pipeline. And each of us have been in that pipeline at some point in our lives, even if it was our first summer job in high school. Now, the other viewpoint you may have is you may have demands in your organizations and in the solutions that you are passionate about solving or opportunities you want to leverage. And the opportunity you have is to identify and find the right talent. We want this to be a dialogue today. So we want to start by each of you have note cards on your tables. Grab a pen, pencil. If you have questions as the panelists introduce themselves, we'd like for you to jot those questions down. And I want the staff members that are in the room, please raise your hand if you are here to pick up the cards. There are several people in the room. There they are. So they're right here. They're going to stand up, and once you get your cards, if you put your card in the air, they'll stand in the back and watch. We're going to, in about 10 minutes, we're going to collect all those cards. So try to write your questions down. If you have another question, feel free to grab a staff member and they'll bring them up. They're going to sort through the questions and hand me a stack of questions. I have several to kick us off, but as they introduce themselves, if you think of something or a question that you might have for a particular panelist or for the whole panel, I encourage you to write that question down, and so be thinking about that now as we go through the journey. So as we kick off today, I just wanted to tell you a personal anecdote about my own experience in needing to hire. When I first moved to Columbus, I am still living I'm from Central Ohio-ish, southeastern Ohio. Anybody ever heard of the world's largest basket? So I live in Dresden, Ohio, and I grew up in this area, and I moved to Cleveland. I spent my first 10 years in Cleveland. I was director of customer service for Ohio Bell. Who remembers the Bell companies?
I do.
Anybody? So I was promoted and moved to Columbus. And we had a growing team, and our company was going through a lot of change, and I needed to find talent. And I looked everywhere to hire for the right position in this technical role, and I couldn't find anyone. So I put a job search out, and I ended up identifying a person I think he lived near Texas. I can't remember now. It's been a few decades ago. I'll date myself. And I hired him and moved him here to Ohio. And when I reflect on that experience, and I think today, we are still having some of those same challenges in finding the talent that we need for certain roles, especially in technology. And so my whole passion has been, for a lot of my career, I spent time working in corporate America. I spent time hiring. I was director of Longaberger University, managing learning programs for them. I spent 5 years as professor at Muskingum University. I helped design and launch a master's program, the Integrated Business and Technology. In fact, they have a booth here. If you haven't seen it, go out and check out that booth. And through that journey, and now I'm with Pillar Technology as Chief Learning Officer, and my mission is to help cultivate and grow thinking, ideas, and possibilities and potential. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So I am going to turn it over to our panelists. We're actually going to start right down here with Kimberly. Each of them are going to introduce themselves, and they're going to share some unique tidbit about their lives, something that no one may know about them, just so you can remember who they are. So we're going to start with you and work our way down. Be writing your questions on those cards, everyone. Thanks. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Okay, hello. Is this on? Awesome. So my name is Kimberly Clavin. A little history about me is I actually have a master's in engineering. I got my undergrad at Purdue and my master's here at The Ohio State University, and specialized in acoustics. And I worked in the industry for a while, and then I taught mechanical engineering at Ohio State for a while. And now I am in K-12. So I actually went from K to career and then back down from career to K. I have located my maturity level around 14 years old, so I'm in a good spot for me right now. But what I really did in Dublin City Schools, the first year was strategic planning. What do we need to do to prepare kids to be college and career ready? And what I found is that college ready is actually quite different than career ready. And what the colleges want, it doesn't really match what the career wants. And so it's a challenge in K-12 to really prepare kids for either or. But we are really working at coming up with strategies to result in a child that is college and career ready. A little tidbit about me is I was the first participant and winner of a toilet tossing contest in 2000 in Burt, Iowa, when I was working for Winnebago Industries. Now, some say I had an unfair advantage because I was designing a toilet for Winnebago at the time. But yes, I was the first and only participant, 11 feet, big toilet. And now I'll turn it over.
Research says that's what they're going to most remember about you. My name's Mike Newbig. I'm the president or CEO of Capture Education. We're located in New Albany, Ohio. And to clarify, as Kimberly asked me, this is not a beer. It's an iced tea.
I was jealous.
I don't want you thinking the whole time that I'm really that cool, because I'm not. Basically, what we do at Capture Education has a lot to do with the unique story I'm going to tell about myself, but we provide software solutions to K-12 school systems that help them identify non-traditional and traditional data points around students that predict and drive them towards courses, pathways, and programs where they will be successful. So getting away from the typical grades, teacher recommendation, that kind of thing, our algorithm really we learn you, I guess you would say, and then the students are directed towards those programs. So what that comes from is my background being, I was the youngest of 5 kids in my family. My older brothers and sisters never went to any kind of post-secondary program at all. My mom got her GED and my dad didn't go past 8th grade. So I never had any kind of advanced class. I never really had much opportunity or was directed towards any pathways or difficult curriculum that I would be engaged in. And I had a professor when I went to Otterbein that I kind of floated the Mr. 2.4 GPA all my career. And I wrote a paper in her class, and we had individual meetings being a liberal arts school. And she said, you know, I've never had anybody look at this topic this way. It's very creative, it's very smart. And at the time, she said, so you're going to be in education, which was kind of putting it down. So I was like, yeah, I was going to be in education. So I really identified that point as the time that I really started to understand that not only myself, but everyone else, we all have not just regular intelligence, but extreme interests and extreme talents in certain areas. You just got to find it, and you got to look in places where people don't often look, and that's what our company does now. So I'm looking forward to talking with you the rest of the time, and thanks for having us today. So.
Well, I'm Stacia Edwards, and I work at Columbus State Community College. And I've been in higher education my entire career. I started at the department level in a department of psychology, and we actually weren't all about clinical counseling. We were really interested in human factors and industrial organizational psychology. So even way back when, I was really interested kind of more into this connection between education and really what we do when we're out in that labor market. When I was an assistant dean of science and mathematics, I was actually looking down the hall, and our senior chemistry majors had to take a class that required them to take 3 5-hour labs a week. And then they also had to take 2-hour and 40-minute lectures, and everyone who's been in education knows, you know, the rest of the story. And when I was talking to these students, it was a really hard class, and they were all very, very bright. They were seniors. They had no idea what was available for them in the labor market. And that was really a changing point for me and when I decided to pursue this thing called workforce. So my angle in workforce is just a little bit different. And what I'm really fascinated by is this notion that there's somehow equilibrium in our economy, that somehow all of a sudden we're going to have all the people we need for all the jobs and it's all going to be a zero-sum game. So when we think about education, we know that it takes a while to educate someone. You know, we're talking 2, 4, 6 years if they're post-secondary or even within post-secondary. And then we know businesses want people right now. And so making that connection and convincing any student, adult, anybody, that there are going to be opportunities for them coming along is really interesting stuff. And I say from where I sit, we're not very good at it. So that's what we're working on right now at Columbus State. And an interesting tidbit about me, as it relates, I have 3 daughters, had 3 kids in 2 years. And when they talked about me for Mother's Day, I found it very telling. One of the daughters showed this beautiful picture of the 2 of us posed. Another daughter showed a picture of the 2 of us at a party. And then the 3rd daughter showed a picture of the 2 of us on a tube and said, my mom's a badass. So I think that reflects who I am very well.
I would go with that.
I love it.
Go with that for sure.
All right, so it's my turn. I'm Aaron Schmidlin. I'm a PhD candidate actually here at The Ohio State University. My research area is actually in STEM education, science, technology, mathematics, engineering education. And I find myself driven to kind of add to what the other panelists have interjected into the conversation. My area of research and what I like to tell people is I'm about trying to plant flowers in the desert. The idea being that you have an environment where we don't anticipate success being fostered. But since a lot of us are programmers in the room and a lot of us understand, actually work in a field where the imagination, having a vision is a component to building success. One of the things that my research showed or discovered is the belief and success, and the belief in the possibility of the hope, and the belief of solutions to these larger problems is a critical component to finding the solution. And so if we anticipate that we can, as individuals, make a contribution and can solve these problems, then we can definitely make an impact. And so conferences like this are really important in framing those questions and actively engaging in solving a problem I know that we're capable of solving.
That's right. So I just have to add on to what he's saying. It sounds like you're talking about the heart and the head both together.
Absolutely.
Right? All comes together. So nice lead in for what I do. I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm the VP of HR at Cardinal Health for the IT organization. Proud of our new Fuse organization that we just started up 1 year ago as of yesterday. And I also support the customer service group. And Cardinal Health, for those of you, many of you have heard the name. You may think that it's a hospital, you may think it's a lot of things, but what we are is an integrated healthcare provider, integrated healthcare solutions provider. We do logistics, we do products for healthcare, we serve the patient, and finally we do business solutions. So that's kind of Cardinal Health in a nutshell, maybe contrary to what you've thought in the past. My role as the VP of HR is to really help us attract, develop, and retain the best talent on earth. And we do that by having great roles and having great careers in our company. And I love what I do. I love the opportunity, as you said, to build a great workforce in our organization for the future. So what's unique about me is that I'm probably the only University of Tennessee volunteer fan in the room. And no booze, but if you are a fan, you can see me afterwards. But I did marry a Buckeye, so I guess that at least gives me a little bit of credence, but I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you all. So if the team is in the back of the room ready for anyone who has questions in about 3 to 5 minutes, if you can just raise up your cards, they'll come around and grab them. So we'll take that for about the next 3 to 5 minutes, write your cards down, or you can see them from the back of the room and go and give them the cards, or even walk up here and hand it to me if you need to, and we'll see how many questions we can get through today. But I wanted to start the conversation by having a perspective from each of you, and I actually would kind of like to work from K through to higher ed. I'd like to have them share their perspective on what they see happening in their area in order to build the pipeline. What are two things? We'd like to know what are the things that are working and where is a challenge. So if you would like to please share those two things in any order. We're going to start with you. What are the things that you see happening, what's working, and where are the challenges? Thank you.
Well, in Dublin, we recently received a $1 million grant from the state to implement a bunch of strategies that were put in place to prepare kids to be college and career ready. But one of the things that's really working, well, there's 5 components to the grant. There's 5 major components. There's dual enrollment, basically high school kids getting credit for college while in high school. Internships, kids getting total immersion activities. Teacher externships, getting the teachers out learning what the real world relevancy is. Project-based learning, actually having real life projects in the classroom like you would see in the industry. And mentors, providing students with mentors. Those are the 5 things we're trying to get into the school system. The challenges really are, well, there are many challenges to the system. I call them operational and environmental challenges. There's obviously policy, state policies and such, but I'm finding one of the biggest challenges is teaching teachers. If I were to take any of you and have you suddenly go into do a brain surgery, would you be able to do it? Probably not. Teachers are teachers and they're trained to be teachers. They're not trained to be engineers, so they don't have the knowledge or the experience to be able to put that in the classroom, but that's really what we need is that real life relevancy in the classroom. So how do we train teachers to get the word out? That's really the challenge we're running into right now.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to you. Thanks.
Okay, and just to give you a little background on my experiences, I have a pretty strong national perspective, which is interesting to apply locally and apply in Ohio. After I left Westerville Schools, I consulted with in 45 states and hundreds of schools around a lot of these same topics. And in our software users now, we have about over 500,000 students in 13 states, and we sell nationally, and I get to see a lot of different initiatives and stuff across the country. And part of this is what Stacia and I were just talking about, but the two biggest challenges I see is that really when you're trying to look at using tools to identify traditional and non-traditional traits beyond grades and beyond teacher recommendation, which really are very limiting because they don't really dig much into the potential of the student. There's a couple issues. Number one's procedural changes. Number one, there's a fear in the beginning that you're going to remove that human element, that even though we automate the process of telling a student what they should take from grade 9, 10, 11, 12, and beyond, there's a fear that you're going to lose that person that individually knows them and can help them and knows what they need to do. But unfortunately, most of the choices that students make are very non-data driven. They're just from a book that they see the courses and the teacher in front of them that had them last, and the guidance counselor who sees them once a year are the only ones that can tell them that. So we say we're trying to add on to a portal where you have this rich data about the 360-degree student evaluation is what we want. We want to know all of you, and then that can assist that person to make that recommendation. The second part is really looking at the difference between college and career ready. Really that career part gets a lot of times segmented into the fear that they're not going to go to college, the fear that this job is not something that they're going to be successful with. And I think we're afraid, parents are often afraid to hear what is it that they would be best at doing, because I wanted them to be a doctor, a lawyer, a whatever. And that can bring a lot of fears that, well, it really says this pathway is best for you. I know a lot of us looking back would think we wish we had that kind of system built into the people that were advising us. So behavioral change is really hard, even though it sounds great. Oh, we're going to take this data and we're going to look at where students belong and how they best fit in the early paths that lead to the workforce. And that's the biggest challenge we're seeing is in education. It's often we are in a race to be second, not first. So when somebody else does it, see how that works, and we'll move forward. So that's probably my perspective.
Thank you, Mike.
Best.
Thanks.
Sure.
One of the things that I'm involved with at Columbus State is something called the Central Ohio Compact, and it's a strategy document that was written in 2011. And it's a piece of paper that has strategy on it. But what it's done for us is it's actually given us something as a region, and when you think of what Kimberly's involved in and what a number of our regional school districts are involved in, it's a strategy that everybody's looking at or at least paying a little bit of attention to. So we've identified some strategic areas where we believe, and we've got evidence that there's going to be jobs. And then we have created these pathways where students in high school actually are being exposed to them and actually able to take courses. So this is a little bit of a change, because now instead of having to say I'm going to be a career tech student, I can actually just take a couple classes in my home school. So we're making movement. We're actually making these things available over the course. It was an incredible pace, but we digitized courses, and now there will be 63 regional high schools that will be delivering these courses to high school students this next year. So loads of progress. All that being said, we still have some big issues, and what was just reflected in what Kimberly was saying earlier about the number of students that are enrolled in her IT pathway. There's a big thing called human nature. So we have a population of parents and students who really believe that they know what that labor market looks like and is going to look like. And they believe that they know what is best for them. And we also have a kind of a class status with some of our jobs. For some reason, a lot of people have in their head that making things and doing things is a little less than, I don't know, sitting at a desk. Anyway, we've got a lot more work to do, a challenging work to do, to help people see that just because you take a course in high school and just because you even get a certificate in it, it doesn't mean that's what the rest of your life is. I mean, I look at my background. Yeah, I have one of those psychology degrees. I have a master's degree in philanthropic studies. Who does that? It gave me so much information, though. You know, I find that I use all of my background, and then I went and really learned more about higher education, but each one of those pieces of information enables me to do the work I do today. And none of it was like, oh, I took this course of study and now I can't do all of these things over here. So I really feel like that's the challenge space right now that we're in. And while we're all pinging at it, Kimberly, Mike, everybody here is pinging at it, we don't have those solutions yet.
Thank you, Stacia.
Well, it's a huge question, and it seems, but it's good that it's open-ended. I think that the major challenge, a couple major challenges, if we go K to 12, would be our assumptions about the purpose of education. And you can see that in the coursework, and you can see that in the requirements that are placed on people. And part of the issue there is how success is measured in education if we have the assumptions we have about education. I'm not sure many of you know it, but right now there's a large move nationally for testing, for assessing students' performance. And a tremendous number of teachers are fleeing the profession. And part of the reason why they're fleeing the profession is because they have trouble teaching. And they have trouble opening people's minds and providing access to vision, because what they're being asked to do is a performance task. And coming from a mathematics and an engineering background, when I had first assessed this idea of teaching, or of assessment, one of the things that came to mind was, well, if they can't pass the test, are you really teaching them anything? But I think that the problem is a little bit deeper than that, because the test is applied to children living in poverty, children who don't necessarily have the same system of support that upper middle class kids have in their household. And so we're taking this test that really is designed for upper middle class kids and applying it to kids who are challenged in the inner city, who face tremendous different obstacles to their future and have a different system of values that's placed upon them by the circumstances in which they exist. The other issue is that upper middle class kids, wealthy kids, are also tremendously disadvantaged by these tests, because their success is measured by performance on a specific task. It's not about creativity. It's not about truly investing ability or developing problem-solving skills. It's a performance. And so really, the test dumbs down the actual objectives of the educational process, because we aren't assessing, in my opinion, the right way. And as long as we continue to assess on performance tasks, instead of providing kids with tasks that will help them to authentically engage with the challenges that they'll face in life, to learn to be problem solvers, real problem solvers, not algorithm users, then we'll continue to see negative performance in our schools. And in fact, the fear that is engendered in teachers about performance causes the teaching to actually be tremendously constrained. So I would say that those are major obstacles. But one of the major opportunities that I see, if it's done right, because there are problems, is the opportunity to provide kids with access to different algorithms, different opportunities for success. I really like the fact that the state of Ohio has programs that allow kids to go to college early, to actually assess their performance. The other opportunity is actually the charter school opportunity. Now, charter schools are a threat to traditional education, and there are problems with it, but it allows us to step outside of the box that we've been provided with and provide kids with new opportunities for engaging with success.
Thank you all so far. And Kelly?
You hit on something that I'll touch on as well, experience. You move away from testing to actually getting experience, either on the job or just experience in life. I think that's what matters the most. I think certainly at Cardinal Health is one of the things that matters most is what experiences can I get to grow myself individually? And I think we do a pretty nice job of giving you the right experiences. One of the reasons that I've stayed with Cardinal Health is that they've allowed me to stretch and grow my career over time. So probably given me jobs that I didn't deserve. And this is an opportunity for me to grow and stretch and have a little courage to step outside my comfort zone. So I think one of the things we do well is give you great experiences as a job. You have to have great jobs in order to have great talent. In order to find great talent, even if you have the best talent on earth, if the job is not right for them, all bets are off. So find great jobs, great career paths, and that's something that we're continually working on as a company. It's something I think we need to even do better at within Cardinal Health to grow very technically based roles that allow you to influence across the organization. We have some today, but we're growing. A challenge for us is how do we attract more people into technology? Technology is a foundation of every single thing that we do in life. And IT is different maybe than it once was. It might have been known maybe as just infrastructure at one point, but now it's pervasive. And what you're doing today is so in demand that it's hard to find the right talent, the great talent that's out there because it's extremely competitive. You're very marketable. We were just recently looking at an in-demand survey of the jobs in technology. So many things that every one of you do in this room are on that list. Cybersecurity, data analytics, software engineering, all of those jobs are so in demand, and you're trying to build that talent, and I'm trying to hire it, and this is going to be a challenge for us as an organization, and it's going to be a challenge for us as an industry, and certainly in Central Ohio. So I believe that we need to hire from Central Ohio, but I think we also need to bring in talent outside of Ohio into Ohio because I think it's becoming maybe a mini mecca for technology. So your help to be an ambassador for this area, whether it's the company that you're working for today or the company that you maybe hope to work for, how can you speak about what talent we have here and the fact that you want to bring more people into this, into Central Ohio? That's the primary thing, but I want to focus on how do we make sure that we're building talent at the middle school level. I think for especially to bring even more women and minorities into this realm, we are going to have to start at 3rd grade. So whether it's Raspberry Pi or whatever it is we need to do, we have got to bring more women and minorities into this field. And I know the work that you're doing is doing that. Everybody on this panel is doing work there. So just a shout out for Cool Tech Girls who brings young girls into these companies to get them experiences looking at a 3D printer like we did at Fuse. Experiences that they can go home and they can say, wow, that was a lot of fun, or I hated it. So we need those experiences so people can have that, either the joy in the career or finding out what they want to do.
Having a vision for the future.
That's exactly right.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Kelly. In fact, each of you, their answers were so deep. I am just very moved by the realities of opportunity that I assume some of us don't even know exist that's going on in all of these areas, and knowing the challenges that you face, because each of us may have students that are in a certain area of that role. I know I have a soon-to-be senior at Miami of Ohio, and I have a junior in high school who actually is attending community college, and he will be almost 2 years complete by the time he graduates high school. So I personally am living this myself, and I'm sure many of you may even have those that are entering grade school, and you may be all the way across the spectrum. And so the power here is I wanted to actually leverage on Cool Tech Girls, and not just that, but other programs. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to start with Kelly. And Kelly, you actually already knew a few people here on the panel that I did not even know that she knew as we put the panel together. So I know there's 3 of you that collaborate. I'd like for the 3 of you to comment on this collaboration. The whole point of this is I want each of you to know what's going on right here that you can tap into. So if you could let them know what's happening their companies can tap into so that they can connect into this talent pipeline. So if the three of you could comment on that, and then if the other of you have anything else to add to it, that'd be great to hear. So Kelly, I'll have you start.
And one that I'll mention that is these two folks I think have a connection to, but I don't know how deep it is, but the Collaboratory. Many of you in the room have probably heard about the Collaboratory, which is 7 member companies that have come together to really focus on developing talent in data analytics and cybersecurity. We know that that's such an area of focus, and we're trying to get these 7 member companies, of which Cardinal Health is one of those, to say, okay, one, how do we attract talent within Central Ohio and outside of, and then how do we develop it once we have it, and how do we keep them here and grow? So it's one area of focus that the companies that are the 7 member companies, at one point I'm sure that it'll grow beyond that, but it is a great chance for us to learn as a community what we can do to help each other. I have a feeling sometimes we get so siloed in our companies that we don't look outside. It's easy to just get focused on what I'm doing every single day, but one of the things that you're doing so effectively today is networking and learning what other companies are doing. I fully believe that 2 heads are better than 1, 7 heads are better than 2. We can all learn a lot from each other. So I will just tee off and let these ladies talk. We've had a chance to partner with Columbus State to help provide some insight into what their curriculum should be. And they've offered us this opportunity, and it's been wonderful. We've had a chance to have one of our VPs in IT present and be a part of their advisory board, because we believe that real life experiences from our point of view will help their students and their teachers. And then the other piece is certainly Kimberly's K to Career, where we have a couple of our employees, actually more than that, 3 or 4 of our employees who have gotten involved with K to Career to either help on the mentoring portal or on the building of the curriculum for the IT Academy. So getting out and getting involved is one of the most important things I think that you can do. We all have a tendency to just get focused on our day job, but having that outside activity and influence makes a huge difference.
You want to go?
Yes.
I'll fill in.
So there's a few things. I mean, I love hearing them talk. Aren't they amazing? It's just awesome. One thing I wanted to make a point on earlier, though, that 85% of our jobs now have something to do with information technology, but yet it is not a requirement at all in K-12. And that kind of goes back to the teacher PD part. Like, how are we supposed to have teachers start teaching programming, because they never have had programming? But that was just kind of a side note. But one of the things with K to Career that one of the main focus points, I mentioned those 5 things, the mentoring, internships, dual enrollment, that we're trying to integrate into there. But one of those components is a virtual mentoring system. And what that is, it's called K to Career Pro Portal. And it's a way for industry professionals to mentor teachers and or students online anytime, any place. You just press on Become a Mentor on the website. You mark your specialty areas and what you do, and then teachers and or students will pose a question. It will match your specialty to what they selected, and then you're in a collaboration window, and it's anytime, any place. So we're actually currently developing it. We had some database issues. We were supposed to be live already, but we've been still trying to do the tweaks. We probably won't be in full force till
I think
next
there's
fall.
a few people in this room that know how to solve databases.
Yeah.
You
So if
might-
anybody wants to step up to the plate and just solve all of our issues, so it's actually just trying to dip into the Dublin schools database. It'll be a nice one login for the teachers and students once we get the live Active Directory working. We do hope that this will spread outside of just Dublin City Schools. The whole idea of this grant is that it's scalable, but we would love for mentors to go in there. We do have a high, it's interesting, it's very telling that we have a lot of IT people interested. But unfortunately, our curriculum doesn't call for IT, so not many kids would be selecting that as a specialty area. So that's going to be a challenge. But it really is the new age resource. It's the new library resource. Go and find an expert to answer your question. So it's kind of like a social networking. But like they were saying, is really just getting involved. There's another organization called Cool Tech Girls that I've been helping out with. It's trying to get girls interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, girls are most interested in areas that have to do with Nurturing. We find that women go into education and medicine because it's helping somebody. And so we need to do kind of a major shift in marketing on how engineering, we're really helping people, we're saving lives. And IT world. I mean, IT and manufacturing just to kids just doesn't sound sexy. We need to make it sexy. And so helping schools, reaching out to your schools to come up with ways to help with that. Do in-classroom visits. Hopefully once this virtual mentoring system is up and lifted, getting involved in stuff like that. Those are some tips of things your corporations could do to help.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, and no pressure to Dr. Edwards. The challenge or the opportunity, you're like bridging, right? You take these minds that have just, they're ready to go, and they come to you, and then you know, being in charge of workforce strategy, no pressure, right?
No pressure.
I mean, that's huge. So understanding that this bridge that you have, and I know you're collaborating, we'd love to hear your viewpoint on maybe some practical things that you see happening that even these companies can tap into.
Well, I think one of the things that's been interesting for me, I think one of the first encounters that I had where there were educators and businesses in the room, we brought the businesses in and we wanted to ask and know what they needed. And when they expressed what they needed, all the educators said, well, we already do that. And I learned very early on that the educators were there only as technical experts. When asked a question, that was when they could answer it. And if they opened their mouth, they weren't invited back. And so we really had to become better listeners to what you as businesses were saying that you needed. It is very easy for us to actually adjust curriculum, to look for new things. Right now, with the things that are out there that have been developed, there's curriculum on the market. We can adjust that. What's interesting is that tends to be the place that people want to go first because it's tangible and it's kind of an easy thing to do. This other piece, which is recruiting the students, making sure that whatever we're doing is engaging to the students, that's the heavy lift because we don't really know those answers. So the exciting thing for me right now is that we've got the employers at the table, we have K-12 at the table, and we really are in an experimental space where, you know, we're going to be trying things. We've got new pathways deployed. Right now, we know that the way we're marketing that pathway, it is not working. So we need to go back to the drawing board. The state of Ohio made $250 million available in a fund called Straight A. And what that did for us is it actually gave us dollars so that we could do this experimentation. It was one-time only funds. They had to be spent really fast. But it really did give us an opportunity not to build a program, but to build an infrastructure. And we had to be thinking about how not only it was sustainable, but also how it was going to increase efficiency in K-12. So we had to show in the budget how it was going to actually decrease the amount of money spent. So that initiative really moved the bar on some of this work because it did require that we have business partners in order to get some of those dollars. But one of the other things that I want to share is here in the Midwest, sometimes they say that we're really humble, and also we don't like to share things until they're done and they're perfect. And then you go somewhere else in the country and they start talking about it and you go, wow, that's a great program. How many people do you have in it? And it's like, oh, 22. So we go back and look at what we're doing and we realize just how significant this work is. So recently, one of the things that we're a member of, it's called Pathways to Prosperity, and it's a national network of states that are actually trying to focus on putting career pathways in place. Now think about that. That's a heavy lift at a state level to really think about career pathways at the regional level. So when I went to this conference and we were talking, there are states, systems, and they don't even know how to do this dual enrollment thing. They can't even get a high school teacher talking to a college teacher or vice versa. So we've already got that figured out. And I just look at that, and while we can lament the fact that we don't have this tight relationship yet with the business the way we want to, we haven't figured out what the job shadow mentor ratio is, we've really come a long way and have a wonderful platform, an opportunity space to bounce from right now. So that's kind of my takeaway at the moment.
Well, thank you so much, Stacia. And I'd like to have Mike and Aaron comment. I'm sure you've had things that come to your mind during this last question round, so go right ahead.
Well, I guess that the one thing that stands out to me is how different it is in the southern states of Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, Alabama, where I think that our viewpoint of college and career has been a little different, and it seems that our program has been more easily implemented down there because of the fact that we don't seem to have this, what I call, belief system in segmentation by expectation. And one of the things that my passion and my work has always revolved around is that segmentation by expectation means at a really early age, we segment the students into groups and tell them at that age, this is all you're capable of achieving. Or this is what you're...
Woo!
That was...
Hello. Are you sure that's not a beer?
Studies show this.
He's really passionate about this.
Yeah, we're being bombed up here.
It is tea in his glass, I promise.
Wow. Okay.
Can you
Okay,
hear?
it's on. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that's a great losing your thought. So segmentation by expectation seems to be stronger ingrained to me in Ohio than it is in some of these other states. Meaning that if you go into some of these surrounding districts and districts in Ohio, the belief system is really strong that my student is either going to go in these areas that are really focused around students are for the honors and the high level kids. And that if we start trying to apply pathways that are assigned by what I call by interest, not ability. So we're going to find out what is your aptitudes, what is your interest, and we're going to recommend these placements, and we're going to ensure that these placements are in high wage, high skill jobs. That belief system has taken on in some other states better. I'm not sure if it's because they have a different view of workforce, they've been at it longer, but we have a long way to go around, in my opinion, in this state to have an understanding that there's not a really strong line, that a career and tech program can be just as meant for an honors or an AP student as is an engineering student for somebody who's not the best at, at this point in math or something else. We really have to look at interest, not ability, get away from segmenting kids too early, because there's a lot of Mike Newbigs out there that have a 2.4 that don't have any clue that they have possibility and opportunity. And as you're working with these districts, we're all so used to in our culture, only so many kids. We segment ourselves. We have parts of our companies that are they are the administrative part of the company. You're the worker part of the company. You're the this level. And we have to get away from that and look at more of a collaborative environment where people are in a place where they're going to be successful because of what they know and what they're good at, not these early factors that we try to limit them with. The last thing on this is that these experiences, if you get into this, and Stacia talked about her background, it's an experience that you're going to use in some part of life. It's not limiting. You're going to take those skills that you learn and you're going to apply them to other areas. So what is the worst thing if you get involved in a strong pathway area as a young student? What's the worst thing that happens? Maybe you don't choose that area, but look at all what you learned out of that. Now the last piece, and you talk about STEM, and I really want you guys to pay attention to this because I have a national perspective on this. I used to work with Siemens. Siemens Corporation hired me in my consulting days to help build career academies around the country that were focused around STEM. We did some in Alaska, we did some down in Texas, and in Syracuse, New York. And the most ironic thing that you have to understand about segmentation by expectation is this. There are hundreds of STEM academies across the country where there is no math teacher, and there's no math teacher, so it might as well be called SEM, right? No math teacher. And it's called science, technology, engineering, and math. There's even some where there's no science teacher. The reason is their curriculum is so segmented. And let's take a group of 30 students. In the high schools around here and around a lot of parts of the country, there are 8 to 12 possibilities of different math or science levels they can be in. If I'm one teacher of 30 kids, there's no way I can cover all of those different levels. So the segmentation happens because we can only take the kids who are algebra and above, which now means we only have what we consider to be the smart kids. Or we can only take the ones who are in the middle. So you have to really work with heterogeneous teaching and standards-based teaching and a lot of shift in those types of things that allow that model to happen. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's great. It's in the beginnings, but I really encourage us as a state to look at some of these other models and some of the people that have perspectives on how this has been successful in other places. And a lot of that starts with, down at the early ages, you're taking math. And as a teacher, you're expected to push them all and serve them all, not just, segment them right away. That's the easy way out. It really is. So, okay. Sorry.
Love to hear your thoughts, Aaron. I'm sure
Yep.
you have some things to say.
Well, there's a tremendous number of things here. And I was just thinking to myself what was going to be comprehensible.
I saw your wheels turning. I've gotten to know Aaron pretty well.
Yeah,
He's been
I brought up
a great colleague and collaborator with us and our learning ideas, and I knew your wheels are turning on this topic.
Well, I think that the one thing that stood out to me was Mike's comment about the 2 was it 4 or 5?
2.4, yeah.
4.
Proudly
Okay.
stated.
I didn't want to say 3, so I figured
Yeah, don't insult me.
Well, and the idea that that number is important. It's the assumptions.
You know I was kidding, right?
Yes, yes. And it's the assumptions that we have about what people can do. So I think that one of the issues here that would be worth taking away is that kids can. And if you are able to open your doors to young people and provide them with a vision of what the future might look like, or even what the present might look like, because innovations in technology, I know that there's a reason why they seldom give awards to older mathematicians, is the limberness of their mind. And if we have a culture that assumes young people can't, and assumes that there's a certain point that they're going to reach first before they then can become involved in this adult world of production or this adult world of computer science, then we're closing a door that doesn't need to be closed. And so in your companies and in your day-to-day work, I would encourage you to think about how you can open up your doors to young talent. Because if we're talking about expanding the pipeline, one of the major issues with the pipeline is human resources. Do you fit the label of who I want to hire right now? And so do we want somebody with 5, 10 years of experience in IT, or do we want somebody who's ready to learn and to grow? And part of that question is, where do you want to see your company in 10, 20 years? Do you want to have an open door to young talent? Do you want to foster and grow young talent? Do you want to be part of those collaborative participation that's really going to grow the talent for your business and also for your industry? One of the things that Mary had said in the previous year's presentation was she spoke about an award-winning farmer who gave away his seed corn every year. And one of the things that I found telling about that, what Mary revealed, was the reason why the award-winning farmer gave away his seed corn was because his neighbor's corn pollinated his field. And so even if you open that door to that young high school or middle school or college student, and maybe they don't necessarily go with your company, you are creating growth in the field, and you're opening up doors and relationships that are going to make your company more successful. And so if you want a talent pipeline, open up the faucet. Let those kids come in and experience that.
Because we'll learn from those kids as well. Those
Absolutely.
youngsters. It's amazing just having younger talent in our organization. We've learned so much from them to a point that we were thinking about how do you do reverse mentoring? So where a millennial would mentor someone either at the executive level or someone that's been with the company for 20 years. So
Fantastic.
Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Well, the
Yeah.
way that...
Oh,
go ahead, sorry.
I'll let Aaron and then Kimberly, and then
Okay.
I have a whole series of great
Oh, boy.
questions I'm ready to ask, so go ahead.
As experienced problem solvers, we have a set algorithm for how we solve problems. And that set algorithm for how we solve problems actually closes doors for us. And so when we talk, when you mention reverse mentoring, when you bring that young person in, I swear to God, my 3-year-old daughter has taught me more things about my cable box than I ever imagined were possible, because I knew how to do what I wanted to do. And I had the ways of solving those problems, but just observing her opened up the door for that. And if a 3-year-old can do that, then certainly we can open up the doors for young men and women who are interested in the field and who can open up doors for us as well and keep us grounded.
So touching base on that a little bit, 98% of 5-year-olds are creative geniuses. 12% of 15-year-olds, 2% of adults. So when you get, a lot of the companies are doing innovation efforts with adults. Let's get a room full of toys and stick a bunch of adults in there and have them brainstorm and figure something out. Let's get the kids in there. So we actually had a company come out and brainstorm with fifth graders on a problem they were having in the industry. The fifth graders came up with solutions none of their employees had come up with.
Okay, so that's a new program we're starting on Monday, everyone.
I know.
Okay?
Fifth grader to
We're
work.
starting it now.
That's awesome.
So,
I love
mean, get,
So
like,
you think
open
I'm
your
kidding?
doors.
I'm calling you. You
Right,
think I'm
exactly.
kidding? I am.
Well, and you can exercise creativity as an adult. You can get it back. Believe it. Don't fret, you guys. You can get it back. You just have to practice it and get it in there. But the other thing I was going to say is that 65% of the jobs that we're training the future kids for don't even exist right now. So the teachers are kind of at their ends like, I don't even know what I'm training these kids for, but we need to teach them foundational skills. The other thing is that 60% of kids go into what their parents are because that's what they're exposed to. So if you were to work those numbers, if any of you guys are number people in the audience here, 65% are jobs we don't know about, but they're in IT most likely. 60% of the kids go into what their parents are. We're losing it. We're not getting kids into the fields that they need to go in, which is going to create a bigger gap. So career exposure, career exposure, career exposure. And that was one of the biggest things I was shocked about when I came from career down to K-12, is that kids don't know what engineers do. They have a completely different viewpoint.
Thank you. We have a lot of great questions, and I'm going to pepper these at you now, and a couple of you will give your Twitter responses as I have a lot of questions that people have come through. But I do want to hear if you have comments, please share. This is the first top question. The team, thank you, by the way, everybody who put in questions and those of you who screened these. So I'm just going to go with this order. The racial achievement gap is well documented, and it's an issue that's real in our society. Further complicated by a lack of diversity in IT. Can you speak to initiatives in Columbus that target this issue, and what are the methods that we're using to solve them?
Well, I'd use one initiative. A wonderful partner is AEP, and they've put a new initiative in place called Credits Count. And the Credits Count initiative is actually where Columbus State is going and basically adopting 5 different Columbus City high schools, and all Columbus City students will have the opportunity to go to these high schools. And if you walk in the doors of West and the high schools that we're working with, they're very high percentage racial minority students. Each one has a STEM focus, and one of those high schools is going to be IT focused. So boy, it's a heavy lift, because first you walk in the door of an old high school, and guess what? They don't have any technology, like zero. And they don't even know that they don't have technology. And your cell phone doesn't even work. So we have this wonderful partner now so that we can set up this computer lab, but everything that we thought would be there, I mean, it was not even like old, it was like non-existent. So then just that heavy lift to get it to the point that you have power, and then you have at least a room that's connected in a way that can access the internet. It was much more difficult than we thought, but here's evidence of us all working together to attempt to make some of this work. When we think of some of these students, they just don't have access to an environment where they can learn. Now, we know they all have their cell phones, and that is one of the strategies that we're trying to figure out how we can more effectively utilize their cell phones. But again, back in this building, this old building that's beautiful, there's no cell phone service. So when it isn't a Twitter response, it's a really big issue. And also for the population of students, they really haven't seen themselves successful in that environment, and they haven't seen anybody else who looks like them who's being successful in that environment. So that's the work that we're trying to do.
Anyone else?
I would say that the Ohio State University's mathematics coaching program is actually a program that works. It's statewide, grown, actually interstate. It works with disadvantaged children, actually works directly with their teachers, providing them with professional development to help them to understand how kids can be successful. And
Saying any kid, no matter race, no matter background.
no matter
gender.
race and no matter
So-
background, but the reality is that minority students are disproportionately represented in disadvantaged circumstances. Race is a real issue if you take the time to read the research and look at the impacts. And part of the issue there is really beliefs that have perpetuated in society as a result of our history of injustice. And it is important for us to consciously recognize that and to work to mitigate that impact. And part of that is opening your doors.
Yes, excellent. Kimberly.
I guess more than addressing what's going on in Central Ohio, which there is a lot, I wanted to say kind of what's working. So what I found in K-12 was that K through 6, having the the girls and the boys together working is beneficial. Around 7th to 9th grade, actually having them be apart is a little bit better. You'll find the girls keep the interest, because we lose the girls between 3rd and 6th grade in the IT and engineering world. And then in high school, bringing them back together so they know how to work with each other in the end. But what we really found is that the mentoring piece is very important for minorities in IT, women, African American, Hispanic. And so being able to reach out to mentor these kids is probably one of the best things you can do to help the gap. And we also found mentors that are closer to their age or better. And I think somebody heard me say this before. I do this demonstration on extreme pogo sticks to demonstrate engineering. And when I was young and spry, the kids loved it. And now I've got like kids jumping out to spot me because I'm like this old lady on a pogo stick. And I think that if we could get the younger kids, like get the graduate students and the undergraduate students to mentor the high school students, and the high school students to mentor the middle school students, and middle to mentor the elementary kids.
Others, any other comments?
I'll do a quick shout out to a company called Perscalis. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this organization, but it is it started in New York to...
Can you repeat the name, Kelly?
Yes, Perscalis, P-E-R-S-C-H, something like that. Cannot spell on stage. I thought I was a good speller. But the company supports and trains underprivileged students from areas. It started in New York. It is in Texas, and I believe it certainly has entered Ohio and Cincinnati and Columbus. If you have not yet heard of this organization, it's probably just a good one to go and maybe volunteer with. They're always looking for tutors. They're looking for mock interviewers. And you think about what you can do to help a student who is learning IT. So they provide the education for an IT role, and then the companies hire them. So companies pay no money for the development of that student. They're just hiring them once they're trained. Wow. So it's a great company. I think it's probably a best kept secret that we probably need to know a little bit more about. So you can get involved real easily. It's great.
Yeah. Any other comments? Anybody? Okay. One quick comment I have is Andy Andrews, some of you may have heard he's an author, speaker. He said that he believes the most dangerous quote in the world is, somebody ought to do something about that. Mm-hmm. So he kind of kicked me in the hind end. I was listening to him speak. I go to conferences, and he was a speaker probably 5 years ago. And I really care about this issue. I care about the divide in ethnic background. I care about women in technology for lots of reasons. I care about people in my region. So I live in Appalachia, and I'm the co-chair of the Education and Technology Committee for an organization that's trying to foster economic growth in the 16 Appalachian counties in Ohio. And so I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start a program where we reward kids, but it can't be the gifted kids. Not that I don't love them, but they get lots of help. Mm-hmm. This is a program for kids who have potential, who need a little guidance, who need help. And guess what? We formed math teams, and I went on the road, and I raised money, and I got companies to partner, and we have math parties. They get math t-shirts. They're mathletes. They get their names on a shirt, and every year we get pizza party, and you know how much it costs per team? About $500. And guess what? Almost nobody says no to me when I ask them, so hopefully I won't run into you today, because I might ask you. No, I'm kidding. But these kids are learning math, and they're having fun, and they spend about 8 weeks learning math. They use an online math program. It's in the schools, so there's no worry about, having them meet outside of school. So I'm throwing that out to you. I am giving this program away for free. If any of you want to email me, I have the whole thing documented. It's simple, easy plan. It can be copied anywhere in the world, and it's working. We're reaching ethnically diverse kids. In fact, there's more girls in the program than boys. I am so proud that we're doing something about it. So that's the power of this, is you can do this. That's where we are. It's just be creative and make sure you know you can do something about it. So this issue is important. I want to make sure you all know we agree this is a big issue. Now, the next question. What is the ratio of boys to girls involved in STEM? How are the schools reaching out to girls to foster their confidence? And obviously, we just talked a little bit about this in the other one, so we'll be real brief on this one, but do you have any data on that?
Well, in Dublin, we started a club called STEM Sisters, and it's actually a high school student that run organization, and their full purpose is to mentor, well, their full purpose is to get themselves career exploration, so they get tours and speakers for the high school girls, but then they also host 4 events for the little sisters a year to try and get the girls interested in STEM. But the ratio is horrible. I mean, I am obviously a woman in engineering, and I've seen what's going on at the schools. I mean, something's got to be done. And you can really see the drop-off about 6th grade. And you hear it from parents. That's the really hard part, when parents come to see me and say, I don't know what to do. She was interested in STEM last year, and now she's not. And it's the hormones kick in. And it's not the cool thing to do anymore, which is thus the segregation around 7th grade. But I don't have any actual numbers, but I do know it's not good.
I'd say just from a little bit of research, there's a longitudinal data set that is actually housed here at Ohio State, and all STEM is not created equal. So when you look at biology, for instance, you know, women are doing, we have a nice percentage of women getting degrees at the post-secondary level. When it comes to computer science and IT, not only do we don't have the minority representation, we don't have the women, but the most shocking thing from the research that I did was that the women were making significantly less right out of the gate. So if we really want to address this and get more people into the industry, I advocate for actually paying attention, making sure we're all paying attention to that, because I looked at salaries just 6 months after people had graduated with an associate or a bachelor's degree in STEM fields. And I found that, I mean, in some cases it was already for 1 quarter $1,000 less that the women were making than the men. And it was one of those times where, you know, you're a data geek and you run the report and then you run it again and you think, this can't be true. And then I kind of went and covered my head thinking, this just can't be true. But it is one of the things that I think we have to look in the mirror and say, hey, there are other issues that I don't think that I'm not saying there's malicious intent behind it, but if you want to get women to go into the field and you want these to see a diverse workspace, you have to pay attention and say, I'm going to pay the women and the men the same amount.
Great. One of the next questions is about planning to identify career trends. In other words, what are the demands going to be? It's like the whole Wayne Gretzky, it's not where the puck is, but where is the puck going to be, and anticipating that. So what are some of the desired skill sets to help steer learners so that we know how we can, how the learner can equip themselves for what's going to be needed before they become larger problems in the labor market? Any comments on that one?
I'll just say one thing real quickly is that what you're doing here today, I think, is one of the most important skill sets that you can build is agile, being agile. I want to bring agile into HR. I think agile has a place in everything that and the folks that are here from Cardinal Health are saying, please do that. So of course, okay, that's it. No. But we absolutely need to bring more agility into this workforce across the board, whether it's enterprise architecture, can they be more agile? The skills that you're developing today are perfect for the work world of the future. So I'm just hoping that we can do that, broaden it.
Great. Anyone else?
Well, one thing is that, so what I said earlier with college and career ready and the differences, colleges are looking for standardized test scores, your percent in your class, all these measurables, because they have thousands and thousands upon applicants. They can't be interviewing them all. Companies are looking for agility and adaptability and flexibility, teamwork, collaboration, problem solving skills, qualitative data analysis. The job outlook has top 10 listed. They're exactly what you would guess, because it's probably what you're lacking in some of the talent. But industries can interview, and they can really get the character out of the person where universities can't. They have to go off these measurables, and that causes some of this gap between the two.
That's great. Thank you. This next question is, research is showing that millennials are struggling, rejecting the traditional hierarchy of management and the management approach, the whole pyramid, I guess, look at things. What steps can organizations take, and do you see any trends that organizations are trying to adapt and appeal to this different type of workforce?
Well, the one thing that we mentioned earlier was reverse mentoring. I think we can learn a lot from the different generations and from each other. And I think that maybe we need an agile view of how organizations should work. Most of what you're finding today through social media is everything's kind of grassroots. There's a lot of things happening grassroots, whereas there might be a lot of top-down directives, but there's a lot of people that are controlling and influencing organizations and companies and cultures and communities from the ground up. So Twitter, I think, will change a lot about how we lead in organizations and how we maybe deliver our products. So I'm expecting great things in organizations of the future in how we do things, maybe from the ground up rather than top down.
Anyone else?
Well, I would say that that's actually a sign of growth and success in our country. When you have less distance between leadership, less distance between your hands and your feet and your head, you make better decisions. One of the challenges that large organizations face is the disconnect between leadership and the people who are on the front line. One of the analogies I've often thought of is, and I know I've shared this with Mary before, but there are actually illnesses that one can contract where you lose the ability to feel your hands and your feet. And people who suffer from that do a tremendous amount of damage to themselves. And so this phenomena that we're seeing with millennials isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's about harvesting that for the success of your organization, utilizing that. Because if you have people on the front lines who aren't giving you the feedback that you need, or you aren't creating a work environment that allows you to be agile and responsive, then you are less competitive as a business, and you're less competitive in the industry overall. So I would say that this is probably a manifestation of a more successful society, where the next generation is coming up and they recognize their validity. And so it's up to us as leaders to also validate that and use that to our advantage.
Great. Any other comments? So this next question is actually probably everyone in this room is going to want to hire this kid. My 14-year-old son recently managed to install Linux on his school Chromebook. Instead of rewarding his curiosity and ingenuity, the school administrators at his STEM school gave him a 10-day suspension. How do we give kids the space to explore, create, and discover when schools think they can act like corporations? Here's what's really interesting is it kind of reminds me of the panel yesterday. I think those guys are kind of rule breakers. There might even be one or two of them in the room right now. And this sounds like a kid that some of our companies are going to want to hire like when he's 16 maybe, or even earlier. The ingenuity, right? What do you think of that?
I guess I want to comment a little bit on that because I feel close to the high schools and understanding. And I think that one of the things that, if you look at school reform in general, and I'm going to work downwards to that question, is that we're trying to build new models with the people that they lived in the old model. They lived in, when they were brought up, everybody was segmented, the rules were hard, creativity wasn't rewarded, and now they work their way up through that normal system and they become a principal or an assistant superintendent or a superintendent. And I really think we have to understand that there's a whole different set of training that they need to go through. And I'm even almost advocating for some sort of national training because I've met so many superintendents and so many of them who can't see out of a box this big because they worked in the district, they went through the district, they're now in the same job and they can't see how anything could be any different. So if we're going to change the thinking about basically what you're talking about is rewarding creativity and building an environment of creativity, we have to train the current teachers. You have to implement this into the programs that the administrators go in college. And the professors in the college are often the ones who are teachers in those same kind of schools. So it's a real systematic problem to change the whole thinking about what does it mean to build creativity? What does it mean to reward interest instead of ability? And that kind of thing. And it starts with the leaders of the districts. I have seen some districts where, I can't speak to those specific rules, but where creativity was much more rewarded than in others, and it comes from the leadership and what they're looking for and teaching their teachers. So,
go ahead.
I just had a recommendation for the parent, and that's to watch Tony Wagner's Creating Innovators. It's on YouTube, and it's a book, because it goes through how it interviewed a bunch of parents of innovators that we all know who they are, and they basically said that they're rule breakers. So you might have an innovator on your hands. Well, and we'll take them.
Yeah, well, and I mean,
always
it
been
comes
a
back to working in education. What was the purpose of the rule, and who was it for? And so a lot of the things that we bump up against when we're trying to innovate, we know that people tell us, well, I mean, I was using that grant as an example. We had to spend $14 million in 6 months. Okay, imagine procurement in a bureaucratic system called education. We just had to tell people stop. All the rules were kind of in place for business processes, for the business organization, not to help us be innovative. So you think about that rule in particular, that's so the IT shop doesn't have to clean up a mess on the computer. But it's just interesting that you've got to kind of twist it and think about, what am I really here for? Oh, right, I'm not here to make the IT person's life easy. I'm here to make sure that that student has an environment in which they can be educated. Now, I just say all of that, and we don't do that. So we just now at least we've identified variables, and we know the ones we need to really push on from a priority perspective. But I mean, I know at least at the college level, we certainly, just business processes, and, all of the agreements that have to be made, and the things, how the speed at which we can do things. We were just talking about a curriculum change, and they said, oh yeah, well we won't be offering that until the fall of 2017. So who is that benefiting that it took 2 years? What are you really doubting? What are you gaining from that? And I think then that's what we all have to be better addressing.
And exactly right. That was where I was going as well when we think about what's the purpose of education and who is benefiting and who has validity. And in that situation, obviously, the student wasn't considered valid. His needs, his interests, his abilities were not validated, were not valued. And so if we look at what underlies that, that's beliefs about what the purpose of education, and that's beliefs about how education should happen. And it also is an issue of power, and it's an issue of control. And so if we aren't actively engaging and thinking about our hands and our feet, the parts of our body that don't have the ability to cry out for help, but are instead dealt with in that manner, then we see how lights get turned out. And then we also see how once we get that IT graduate who maybe has a graduate degree, where his creativity went to, what happened to him, why aren't we getting the innovation we hope for? And it's because we have a systematic process that undermines innovation. And it does so because of self-interest within the larger system.
Well, there is so much depth that happened right here today, and I wish I could go through every question. I want you to know I thank you for all of them. We only had so much time. I want to give all of you a last word, call to action for these organizations that have needs to grow their pipeline. Just a last phrase or last word or thought that can bring them hope. And I'll start down here with you, Kimberly.
Well, I guess one of my tips for your corporations too is to hold open houses. One of the things we did with K to Careers, we are actually having the teachers take tours of local companies, and they're getting to see the cultures in these places. So we went to Fuse. We also went to Northwoods, which are these incredible cultures of productivity and engagement. And then we went to some manufacturing firms that don't have that flexibility. But keep in consideration with your schools that the teachers are teaching minors. So changing culture in the classroom is a little bit different. You can't just let them alone to do whatever they need to do while you go do something else. Like, we have to watch them. And so we're doing the best we can at that. But my recommendation would be to, like Aaron was saying, open your doors. If you create even an open house and contact the local district's public relations person, say, hey, we're having an open house. Open your doors for teachers or students to come in and just see what it's like, because that's what we really need is education for the educators.
That's great. Thank you. And if you can, if it can be a phrase or a word, because we are out of time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I just want to make sure we get everybody to their next session. Thank you so much. No, I love what you had to say. In fact, I agree with it, and we need to be doing it. Go ahead, Mike.
Can I keep it to a sentence?
You can keep it to a sentence.
Really amazing research states that a student's level of hope, well-being, engagement, and their belief system to handle difficult curriculum, those things are much more predictive of success in college and in career than is their GPA. And it's really important to remember. Look for non-traditional things in your company to measure. Don't just look and worry about the traditional things we look at, because it's not the most indicative of success.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Don't keep talking about a skills gap. Create an action agenda that addresses opportunity.
Great. Excellent.
I'm probably going to have the easiest suggestion, and I would say think about a solution. Because out of the imagination, reality is given birth.
Fantastic.
Adopt a teacher or a student. If everybody in the room adopted either a teacher or a student starting tomorrow, how better off would we be?
Do we not feel so blessed that these people gave of themselves to share the depth that's in their heart and their passion? Please give them a hand. I want to thank my panel. Thank you all. And thanks to all of you, and we'll be seeing you all this afternoon. Have a great rest of your conference. Thank you.